Welcome. This is the Ninja Legion. I'm Spider.
I'm Cecil.
And this is sort of a bagged and boarded, sort of a special edition show.
We'll call it a special bagged and boarded, if you will.
This is a special bagged and boarded. Almost a CGC, I guess. For comic book fans who get that reference.
Is this going to be in really crappy 3D?
No, it's not going to be in really crappy 3D.
Okay.
All right. So the reason we're doing this show, I had an interesting interaction on the internet this week. Marvel had announced that they are letting C.M.Punk of WWE fame write Thor Annual that's coming out next year.
Well, but before we get into this, I just want to make a stipulation that the Ninja Legion is not a stranger to picking fights. So, and we're not here to pick said fight. We're just here to clarify.
But if you think that's what's going on, comment section right down there.
Yeah.
I'll be more than willing to discuss with you.
Well, you can even send your hate email to us through our website.
Yeah.
We encourage that.
Yeah.
Go for it, please.
Yeah, the Ninja Legion. And was it the Ninja Legion at gmail.com?
Yeah, you could do that
or
one.
Spider at theninjalegion.com.
Or you could go to our website, theninjalegion.com, and there's a form. It's very simple. Okay, it's a couple of 4 boxes. It's not hard. And you type in your email, and then you type in your rude, uneducated comment.
Or we can't. Well, not to generalize. Not everyone's going to have a rude, uneducated comment. Some people out there will have legitimately interesting and intelligent responses to what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And if they want to contribute to this conversation, that's great. I'm not going to assume that everybody doesn't know what they're talking about. So, what happened? They made that post. I made a comment saying, I'm tired of, you should, instead of letting celebrities write comic books, you should give actual writers the opportunity to do so. As someone who's been a long-time comic book reader, I go to a lot of conventions. I've made friends in the comic industry in probably the last year or so, which has been awesome. And I think it's not fair that they're going to let somebody who has 0 writing experience take over a flagship character and write for them when there's people who have established themselves, have done work, have examples of the work that they've done that could be doing this instead.
All right, well, let me jump in here just to be, devil's advocate, if you will. So, what's this no-name wrestler? C.J.Punk,
C.M.Punk, and he's not a no-name. He's relatively well-known. He is a self-professed comic book fan. He's done a couple things with Marvel on a segment they called Fighting Fanboys, where basically he just comes in and talks about comic books.
Okay, well, and that's completely fine and admirable. But his literary work is pretty much
non-existent. He has never written anything, or at least never had anything published.
Not published any free ebook, not published
any amateur comic, no self-made comic, no WWE produced comic.
I'm just clarifying
because I looked, I went, I typed in, I went on Google and tried to find some example of his work, and non-existent. So. Upon me making this comment, I was then bombarded by people who are, I guess, fans of CM Punk or just like to start arguments on the internet about why I'm wrong to think
that he's not entitled.
Why my opinion is wrong. Why I'm not allowed to think that writers should be allowed to write comic books instead of celebrities or pseudo-celebrities. Because some people have claimed that he doesn't think of himself as a celebrity. But, apparently being on national television multiple times a week over the course of several years does not equate celebrity.
Well, here's the thing. I used to be a fan, and I'll still watch it occasionally, of WWF. It goes back date to when I really kind of stopped watching, when it flipped over to WWE. And it's great. I know Dwayne Johnson came out of there, with a decent acting career. I know, there's a few things that come out of that, but at the end of the day, it's still a men's soap opera.
Yeah, I mean, and the people brought that up in the comments about, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has this great acting career, but what he was doing was already acting. That's what WWE is. That's what wrestling is. It's acting. It's all staged. Mm-hmm. So there's an athletic element to it because they do stunts.
Absolutely.
instead of just coming out and doing soap opera readings.
I will
and that's it.
Never ever knock any of those wrestlers for their athletic ability.
Yeah. That being said, it's not a sport. It's not truly competitive. It's all staged. You know what's going to happen before it happens. They rehearse these things, the same as any stage play would be done. So that's basically, it's a play. It is a play, but instead of performing the exact same play at each city they go to, they have a different performance.
Yeah.
So, with his career that he's had, does not qualify him to be a writer. People are saying, oh, he's been a comic book fan his entire life. That makes it okay. But it doesn't. I've been a Spider-Man fan since I was a little kid. I've read hundreds of Spider-Man comics. I was an English major for a while. I know how to write. Do I think I'm qualified and entitled to write a Spider-Man comic for that reason? No.
Same thing. I've played video games since I was 3. I am now in my mid-30s. But I know how to code, I know how to design, I know how to do all these things, but I do not quantify myself as a producer, designer, or developer of said product.
Just because you enjoy and read something doesn't mean that you're qualified to do it. So that was one of the things in there that I put down. Now, there were lots of other more inflammatory comments. I was told that I should kill myself. I was told to drink bleach and die.
That one was interesting. I have to give kudos to that guy.
Especially because kill yourself was one word.
Yes.
It was really fun. If I had the time, because I was at work when most of this was happening, I would have gone through and fixed all of the grammatical and spelling errors in the post just to show how qualified I am as a writer to be having this debate. But man, would that have been a lot of work.
That is hilarious because you did show me all the screenshots from this argument.
I did. I documented everything on my phone.
And Spider will be the first one to tell you, I am terrible at grammar.
Yes.
English entirely. And
terrible.
I can tell you right now that was horrendous. Almost just about every comment, if not every other comment,
was horrendously misspelled or used poor grammar.
If you're going to argue about writing and literacy,
you should probably be literate.
Yes, what he said.
All right. So we're not going to focus just on the CM.Punk thing, although that was sort of the main focus of the. This is how it came about. The idea was celebrities in comics, and there's been lots of times where a celebrity has put their name behind a comic book. They've had an idea and had someone else write it. Had things come out. Tyrese Gibson did a comic book that was like 3 issues and then went away. Jennifer Love Hewitt had a comic called The Music Box that was a 5-part miniseries. Alyssa Milano has an ongoing series called Hacktivist, which I've actually heard of and I believe that has gotten pretty good reviews. Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance has gone on to write comic books, whether it's his Umbrella Academy stuff or more recently the Edge of Spider-Verse book. And even Deadpool has been written by Brian Posehn, who's a well-known stand-up comedian. Joss Whedon, but he's a writer anyway, who started doing that. Kevin Smith, the same thing. Their recognition from being a celebrity, from writing something else or being in something else, had given them a gateway into getting this. The issue is that I've noticed, especially as of late, Marvel's been really big on just letting whoever feels like writing a comic book write a comic book. They've had other musicians and stuff come in and write a book because they wanted to. And it's like, writing a song and writing a comic are 2 totally different things. There's different structure to it. There's different storytelling to it. If you even attempt to tell a story in the song that you're writing, not everyone does. And they meet minimal success. Tyrese actually got mad because people weren't buying his comic book. They did what they referred to as shotgun advertising, where he basically just threatened everybody that you need to order this many, and he basically told his fans that you need to go to this place and demand from this person that they order X amount of copies of my book.
Yeah.
In order to sell.
Yes.
Trying to use their celebrity and trying to use social media to try to get sales.
Yeah, but there's 2 different fan groups there.
It is 2 different fan groups, and I actually went and had a talk with Randy, the owner of Collector's Corner, right near here, because he's always really good about this stuff. If I have any questions about comic business things, and he's even volunteered to come in here, but about, what have you seen? You own a comic book store and you have for years. When a company says, hey, we have X name writing, do you sell more comics? Do more people come in and say, hey, I really want to read this book, this person wrote it? And then after the fact, do people continue to read those books? And he said no. That he generally doesn't see a spike in sales when those books come out. He doesn't see a continuation of those people continuing to read books.
And just the to qualify Randy's stature, he owns multiple stores, not just one. He has
two. It's one of the biggest comic book stores in the Baltimore area. He's been nominated for a Harvey Award several years in a row. He has very good relationships with the industry. And, but from an owner's perspective and for someone who sells comics for a living, he doesn't see any improvement in sales. Every once in a while, someone like, I'd use Gerard Way as an example. He was a writer before he started doing My Chemical Romance. He has written his own independent comics, and then after establishing himself through that, was given a chance at a flagship character and telling his own version of a Spider-Man story. It wasn't something that was just handed to him because, oh, people know who you are. Here you go, take it. Comics like the Amory Wars, that written by Claudio Sanchez from Coheed and Cambria. Those comics directly tie into the story that they tell through their albums. And their fans go out and buy those books. And sometimes other people will pick up an issue and continue to read. But at the same time, it's an established story. They're taking their own initial ideas and publishing them, not just given a character. Now, going to someone like Brian Posehn, who was given Deadpool, very popular characters, done, sold a lot of books lately. Sort of, for me, kind of annoys me just because all the people who don't read comics are like, Deadpool's so awesome. I have friends who are diehard Deadpool fans that when Brian Posehn took over, he's a great comedian, but that doesn't translate into good comic book writing. That they didn't feel that he knew how to write for the character properly, that he didn't do a good job portraying it. Yeah, he has funny one-liners and good jokes, but it doesn't equate to a good story. It doesn't work in that new medium.
But he would have probably been better deployed in the comic as a co-writer.
Possibly. And there's somebody else who's written a few books with him. There's Jerry Duggan, I believe, was the other guy who was doing the Deadpool comics with him. But it didn't translate well. That skill set didn't work in this new medium. And that's going to be the case sometimes. So people have the argument that it's good promotion. And going to a direct source, someone who owns a comic book store, said the only time that he notes a marked improvement in book sales are when the companies actively advertise for them. So most recently, the new Thor that came out a few weeks ago. Marvel went on to talk shows, advertised for it, talked about it a lot. The sales went up. I imagine the new Captain America that came out this past week probably going to see an increase in sales because they advertised for that. I heard a radio advertisement for Captain America this week. I've never heard a radio advertisement for comic books before. So that might translate into new sales. DC New 52. They had television commercials. They played them on Adult Swim and things like that, aimed at the audience that would normally buy a comic book, and sales went up for DC. So everyone who argues, oh, it's a promotional thing, it gets new readers, from my experience and the research that I've done and talking to people in the business, that is not true. You think it's true because that's what Marvel tells you tells you it's true, but that's not the case. Real world evidence points to no. Sorry, that's not how it happens. So
I mean, but this has been let's go into Marvel. This has been a recent, over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Thing. Would you think it's the influence of Empire Disney?
I'm not sure if it's the influence of Empire Disney or not, because it seems like that's a gamble thing. Because they're obviously this person who wants to come in and write a comic book. They're a recognized name. They're probably charging a good amount of money to do this. And I know from talking to people who are artists and things like that, those big companies don't pay these small artists a lot of money to do covers, to do interior work for books, because nobody knows who they are. But if it's somebody whose name's recognition, it's going to help I guess what they would think would translate into sales for them, they would probably be willing to pay them a good amount of money, hoping to get a solid return on their investment. Because they're a business, and ultimately that's what it's about, is trying to get a return on the investment that you make into something and make as much money off of your product as you can. It's fully possible. I have noticed, I'm someone who considers myself a Marvel guy, or had. And within the past week, I've decided, you know what? I'm stepping away. Marvel's had this trend lately where it's all hype and no substance. They advertise these big events that they're going to do. They advertise, this person's writing this thing. This new version of this character is going to be awesome. And then you go and you're like, oh, cool. You get excited and think it might be great. And you go and you check it out and it falls flat. And it's one of those things where why board a hype train that's just going to derail? And for people who don't understand, I guess, the comic book reference in this, RG3. I'll use a football example.
Wow.
Everyone,
whoa.
yeah,
whoa,
I'm gonna use a football reference and hope that people get it. Everyone's like, RG3 is this great quarterback. He's gonna do so many things, and look what's happened. He's fallen flat. He's put up bad numbers. He's constantly injured.
That's true.
It's a hype train. Anybody who keeps thinking he's gonna do great, big, awesome things, it's not happening.
Well, let's also equate it to more nerd things. Okay.
Okay.
For example, World of Warcraft. They just dropped the
new expansion.
The new expansion. All this hype and it's broken. Like with the new Call of Duty. All this hype and it's broken. Why are we buying all these broken games? Because the media does this.
Well,
a lot of companies are doing this.
Now, with the broken thing, what do you mean? Like, there's bugs in the game?
There's massive bugs in the game. There are people that are actually having to take down like the Reddit sites and stuff like that because they can't even log in with their mods. There's a lot of broken things with the new expansion for WoW, but Call of Duty does the same thing. There's a lot of bugs. You can't log in, you can't play, you can't stay connected. Halo, the new Halo pack came out this week.
Master Chief Collection,
freaking broken. People can't even stay online for more than 10 minutes. Broken.
So I feel like a thing with that more so than with like the comic book thing, or the hype train idea.
Yeah.
Is that like Call of Duty rushes a game out every year.
Yes.
Here's a Call of Duty. Here's a Call of Duty. Here's a Call of Duty.
But I mean,
WoW, Blizzard usually doesn't rush things that much. They usually take their time, spend a few years developing an expansion, getting their groundwork in, and doing what they want to do with it because they know they don't have to rush. That they have that established audience already.
Well,
it's a little weird there, and I guess with the Halo thing, it's they're updating from an existing because they're taking it's all the old Halo games, shoved together in one.
Well, I mean, there's still separate boot ROMs if you go from a technical perspective. But I mean, what even WoW has the same thing as the Halo Master Chief. They focused more on re-rendering.
But that rolled out a month ago.
Which one?
The re-rendering rolled out a month ago.
No, that's the whole Master Chief collection.
Oh, you mean for Halo? No, for
Halo,
WoW.
Yeah.
For WoW though,
they
did all their character model updates before the expansion.
Yeah, but my thing is if you concentrate on that, you can't have all your resources doing that and then go, hey, we need to rush all this. And that's what I think's happening.
It's possible. But
I mean, in the comic world, it's all this hype because of the movies.
Because of the movies.
And I think they're just trying to crank comics out for the sake of cranking them out.
I mean, I don't think the release date things have pushed up any of that. The issue, I guess, with the hype train in that respect with the movies is that they are trying to take aspects of the movies and translate them back into the comics. They're basically going, all right, we're going to take something that's established, let somebody else dip their fingers in it, change it, make it a movie, and now all those changes that they made to our initial stuff, we're going to go back and put that stuff back into the comics again. So they're going to change the way characters behave. They're going to change the way things interact. They're going to add goofy little elements or like I guess the big one that I noticed, Avengers, Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury. They had Nick Fury in the 616 universe. He was a white guy. They made a David Hasselhoff movie with him years ago. It was terrible. when they made the Ultimate Universe, they modeled Ultimate Nick Fury on Samuel L. Jackson. They took a person, said, hey, we're going to make you a comic book character. Then they made Samuel L. Jackson Nick Fury in the movies, and then translated this portrayal back into his comic book character, and then moved him into the 616 universe when proper Nick Fury died.
Gotcha.
So they're making alterations so that people who see a movie who aren't familiar with comic books can go in, pick up the comic, and then feel like they're familiar with those characters because their only knowledge is from a movie rather than the decades of history that we have from a character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this awkward kind of thing, and Marvel has been the prime culprit on this in the comic book world. DC has been pretty good about keeping their stuff separate from what I've seen. I'm not a longtime DC guy, but DC doesn't do these ridiculous events like Marvel does every year.
You might be becoming a DC guy.
They're not having just like random celebrities write books for them all the time. So it's one of those things that I find myself drifting more in that direction and towards independent books, things that are just done by established writers and artists who said, hey, we have a really good idea. And the big companies, Marvel and DC, go, no, that's not what we want to do. So no, we're not going to let you do that through us. So there's great books out there that are done by talented writers. Going back, I guess, to topic now, where writers should be writing comics and not celebrities writing comics. There's awesome independent books out there. There's Rat Queens. There's Manhattan Projects, Saga, all the Rick Remender stuff, Low, Deadly Class. Things like that. Fairy Quest that's drawn by Humberto Ramos. That's put out through Boom Studios, which is an independent company, even though he's a recognized artist who does work for Marvel and DC. Well, Marvel mostly. He's going and through these, and that's what happened. That's how Image Comics got founded to begin with. Jim Lee, who's DC's like big guy right now, he was one of the founders of Image Comics because he wasn't allowed to do, basically kind of like what he wanted to with characters. He did work for Marvel at one point, and they kind of pushed him aside for the ideas that he had with them, and he's like, all right, well, I'm going to get like-minded people together. We're going to make our own company, and we're going to put out books that we want to make. And people respond to that. The sales for those independent books shot up huge in the 90s. That's when I got more heavily into comics, was through Image Comics. And even now, I find myself reading more of those independent books that are written by people who are talented writers who have good ideas that the big companies just go, no, sorry, we'd rather have Joe Schmo that was on this TV show or this guy who was in a movie once write a book for us because, someone might recognize his name and buy the book.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think that having some celebrity just for name power is the way to be marketing things.
Yeah.
Especially with a fan base that's got a cult following. And to go back to the WWE fan base, they are dedicated following fans, cult fans of WWE.
Yes.
The same way as comic book nerds are to comic books.
And using as an example, I was in Collector's Corner this week, and there was a group of people that came in looking for WWE comic books. They make comic books for WWE wrestlers that basically do WWE type storylines.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people who came in specifically looking for those. So there is a subset of their fandom that would read comic books and also enjoys their programming and will read comic books based off of their programming. And that sort of thing, that was where you could have established C.M. Punk as a comic book writer.
Yes.
Let him write one of your WWE comics. Let him write a book about subject matter that he's intimately familiar with because he's taken part in it over the course of years in a forum where the recognition of the characters is as much as the fandom already knows. It's those WWE wrestlers that he already has experience with.
Oh, yeah.
In that regard.
I mean, even if he has started that, and he started writing in there, doing that, I'd be a little bit more open-minded if he jumped over. But he'd have to jump over to not so much of a mainstream character. Yeah.
Immediately handing him the reins to Thor, who's one of Marvel's,
Disney princesses.
Yeah, who's now a Disney Queen, Disney Queen.
Queen, yes.
Because based on... That's a whole nother... There's a thing where I talk about that. Check out the video for that one. The new Thor is female, and based off of the implied stuff...
Somewhere.
Yeah, Thor 2 just came out this past week. I didn't read it. So anyway, yeah, so having him be established, having him get some kind of experience, having any kind of comic writing credit to his name prior to being handed a flagship character for Marvel Comics would have made me not have the opinion that I have on it, made me not, I guess, make the comment that I initially made that sparked so much outrage from these, what I referred to as mouth breathers at the end of my debate with them.
Oh my.
Simultaneously, there were about I think I got like 300 likes on my comment too, so there were a good number of people who agreed with me who just didn't feel like getting involved in that whole mess that happened.
And I don't blame them. I really don't.
So, I guess you've stuck with us through the longness of this one. It kind of went on a bit. The short version of the story. There's this idea that attaching a certain name to a comic book is going to make that comic book sell more based strictly on their celebrity. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be the case, and unless they have experience or know what they're doing, it's not going to work in an overall trend. You want to bring new people into reading comic books. You want to get more people reading your stuff. Put your stuff out there. Advertise for your comics. Advertise for what you have. Promote the artists and the writers that do good jobs already. Mm-hmm. Part of what I think I've enjoyed so much about New 52 DC stuff is that they've had Jeff Johns write a lot of things, and he's an amazingly talented writer. He's also, and for those who don't read comics, Jeff Johns is one of their head creative people for all of their television shows. So if you watch Arrow and you watch Flash and you like those, if you like the Arkham games, Jeff Johns had a hand in writing those things. The comic book writer wrote for the comic book shows and the comic book games, and that's what's made those things be as good as they are and as successful as they've been.
And I love the Arkham games.
Yeah, the storylines are amazing in them, and it's because they have somebody who's intimately familiar with the material, who's spent the time writing it, who knows what he's doing the work. So, the evidence that I've found, and through doing research, does not translate celebrity into comic book sales.
But if you do have evidence for the
contrary, the counterpoint, if you have the counterpoint,
yes,
and you can support that, please comment below. Send me an email. Comment on our website. Get in touch with us. Let us know what you think. If I overlooked something, if I'm glaringly wrong in some area, or if you just want to start a fight, right down there, comment section.
By all means. We could be here all night.
So, thank you for sticking with us through this. Hopefully you've learned something or understand this argument a little bit better, or maybe you've been so incited that you feel the need to attack me. One way or the other. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Spider.
I'm Cecil.
We'll see you soon.
Don't forget.